convinced it tires of me. And I became the second person to be arrested under it. And how I fitted the profile of an IRA man is still beyond me, because I had what you termed in Belfast a tendency to relieve shops of their goods. I was a shoplifter. And there was no way anyone could connect me with republicanism or militarism or militancy of any way. But in the course of a week, you had 17 innocent people arrested. You actually had more. You actually had 40 or 50. And we were living in squats in London at the time. And there was actually a couple of people from Cumber who were Protestants, who were initially charged with the Guildford and Woolwich pub bombings, who were our co-defendants for 3 months. And then they whittled it down because they knew if they had so many people in the dock that it would fail. But this was a concerted plan by the British government in relation to what the IRA was doing in England. And they knew they had innocent people. On the 24th of November, on the day they sentenced the Birmingham Six, or the day they charged the Birmingham Six, when Maurice Buck, the Assistant Chief Constable, was reading out the names and they were being scrolled down on the television. Unbeknown to the IRA in Birmingham, Special Branch had a mole who called his handlers at Special Branch and gave them the names of the 2 men who made the bombs and the 3 people who carried and planted the bombs. But because they tortured them and charged them, it was almost like a conveyor belt system that had no reverse gear. They had to go through with their charade. And when Muslim talks about torture, my introduction to the British police was to be hooded, to handcuffed, put on a plane, taken off a plane with the hood still on me, taken to a police station I didn't know where, to be stripped naked in front of police officers who'd formed a gauntlet and were spitting on me and kicking me about something I knew nothing about. And all through that week, we were held naked. They had led Alsatians into the cell on long leashes. And I never realised the length of an Alsatian's tongue until it licked me, and how rough it felt. And drinking water out of a toilet. And while this was going on, while they were not extraditing me, but renditioning me, the people who committed the Guildford and Woolwich pub bombings did a bombing on Sunday, the 1st of December at the Green Man in London. And the 2 forensic officers who went to that crime scene were 2 forensic officers who played a major part in the conviction of my father and the Maguires, Higgs and Lidstead. I name every policeman who tortured me without fear. I name the politicians who were involved in conspiring to put me in jail, and put my father in jail, and put my cousins in jail. Patrick Maguire, 13 years of age, his dream was to grow up and be in the parachute regiment, to follow his father into the British Army. If you'd have went into Annie Maguire's house, and I wonder at times what the police who went into Annie Maguire's house must have thought when they were greeted by a large photograph of the Queen Mother, a bust of Winston Churchill, and a Union Jack on the wall. Did they not stop for 1 minute and think? Anyway, we went on trial with a young English girl, Carol Richardson, 16 years of age. They were doing it to their own. They were doing it to their own. In my head, I could sort of come to terms with it a little bit because I lived here. But I couldn't believe what was happening to me over there. We ended up getting sentenced on the 22nd of October 1975. And when we were being sentenced, the judge, John Donaldson, said, "I'm disappointed and I want to know why. The proper sentence is no longer on the statute book. Hanging. Because I would execute the 4 of you. He would have hung us." The Balcombe Street people who committed the Guildford and Woolwich bombings were arrested on Thursday, the 16th of December 1975. And at the end of the siege, they were taken to 4 individual police stations. And they were left overnight. And at the same time, the next day, 4 different sets of Special Branch and Bomb Squad officers went in to interview them. And when asked what was the first bombing they had done, They stated you put innocent people in jail. And they made long, detailed statements about it. How they'd done it, the type of explosive, what they'd put in it, everything. And they give details of the people who were in the boat. They were charged 9 months later after they contacted Frank McGuire, an independent MP, who went to see him in Wandsworth Prison, who came out and said that these people admitted to a crime that other people are in jail for. The British police took them out and took them to a special court and charged them with Guildford and Woolwich. And 3 weeks before their trial, they took them to another special court and dropped the charges and put in 8 complex conspiracy charges, which they were found not guilty of. And they used our trial as a platform to prove our innocence. And on that basis, we were granted an appeal. And in September 77, we went to the appeal court. And we sat there for a month. And we listened to all the evidence. And I remember vividly Joe O'Connell giving evidence. And Michael Haber stopping him in mid-flow saying, you don't have to respond. And they accepted their evidence. A month later, at the end of October, they came back and they gave their judgment. And Roscoe, who was the presiding judge, along with Lawton and Moore, said, we accepted the 4 people in the dock who become known as the Guildford Four, didn't bomb Guildford. In all likelihood, they'd never been to Guildford. And in the case of Helen Armstrong, we accepted they didn't bomb Woolwich. But we think it's possible they may have known the people who did it, although we have no evidence to show that they were connected. And they sent us back to jail for another 12 years. Another 12 years, my dad died. And I knew at some stage I was going to get out, because I shouldn't have been there. Now, the Prevention of Terrorism Act was brought in for a specific thing, to deal with the IRA. Within 5 years, it had seeped down into mainstream policing and was now being used against the unions. Margaret Thatcher used it against the coal miners. So things that they introduce as a security measure, designed for one specific thing, has a habit of seeping in. And when that type of legislation seeps into mainstream policing, we all become vulnerable. Nobody's safe. I thought this only happened to other people. When this happened to me, I couldn't believe this. I thought this is what you see on TV. Or this is what happens in Africa or China. Somewhere else, it doesn't happen here. But it does happen here. And it's closer than what people think. But I think that myself and Paddy had this unquenchable desire and determination never to let this go. And we just developed a writing campaign in jail. And I was with Johnny Cooper and Mickey McMahon, who Paddy knew well, who Ludwig Kennedy wrote a book about called Wicked Beyond Belief. That the case was referred back 6 times to the appeal court, and it had drew enormous legal and religious support, and the case failed. And somehow we knew we were going to get our names cleared. And who helped us? Was it the Irish? Was it the Irish government? Was it the Irish press? Was it Irish documentary companies? No, it wasn't. It wasn't. They did nothing. They did absolutely nothing. They didn't come and see us in jail until British TV documentary companies had made documentaries about his World in Action, First Tuesday, Panorama, the Times had written letters about us. Because they acquiesced. They acquiesced. I'll tell you a story. When my dad died in 1980, on Wednesday the 23rd of January, Gareth Fitzgerald had just been elected, and there was uproar at the Birmingham Sixes appeal being put knocked back, and my dad died. And he got hold of the head of the forensic department, Professor Donovan, and he called him in. He gave him £1.5 million Irish pounds to investigate the forensic that sent innocent people to jail. And a year later he came back and he threw the report on the table that said my dad was innocent, the Maguires were innocent, the Birmingham Six was innocent. What did Gareth Fitzgerald do? He threw it in the bin. He threw the report in the bin. We had got a congressman called Hamilton Fish, who was a Republican congressman, who was given $500,000 grant from the American government to investigate the forensics in relation to the Maguire 7 and the Birmingham 6. And Sean Donlan, the first secretary at the Washington Embassy, went to Hamilton Fish and says, stay away from this. We've had it from the horse's mouth. We've had it from the IRA and the Irish government. They're up to their necks in it. So all the Irish government ever did was keep us in jail. We have enormous debt of gratitude forever to the likes of Ross Fraley and Grant McKay from First Tuesday. Who's the guy, Paddy, from More Than Action?
Oh,
Ian Kilbride.
Yeah.
Ian Kilbride. Ian McBride. All those people who took the time, because here's what it was about them. They were actually quintessential English people who cared about British justice and the reputation of it, such as Gareth does. They didn't want these miscarriages of justice happening in their name. Their judiciary being held up to ridicule. Eventually, 12 years after our first appeal was refused, we were granted a second appeal. And it wasn't an appeal. It was a capitulation by the Crown in the case. And I feel cheated to this day, because I wanted to have an appeal so as I could get back into the witness box and say what I said in 1975, that you kept me naked, you hooded me, you tortured me, you took me out and put guns in my mouth, you had mock executions. I wanted some form of justice, but Roy Amlett, the prosecution barrister, he put it down. Oh, the contemporaneous notes weren't contemporaneous. My alibis had been suppressed and hidden. And of course, 3 weeks after getting out, Lord Denny says, oh, I've been away. And while I was away, the Guildford Four have been released. And though they may be innocent, along with the Birmingham 6, wouldn't it have been better that we should have hung them? To preserve the integrity of British justice. Now I'm just going to touch on something else here. This is a divided community we come from. And when people ask me to get involved in Justice Ireland Watch, I said one of the conditions, and probably the only condition, that I would get involved in if it was cross-community. Because my human rights is no different from someone from the Shankill, or from the Falls, or from East Belfast, or from Sandy Row, or from the White Rock. It's the same. When they get away with doing it with me, everybody is vulnerable. Now the one thing, we have politics that divide us, we have religion that divide us, we have culture that divide us. The one thing that should unite us is human rights abuses, miscarriages of justice, and injustice. And I've been told I can talk here for... But, oh, that's okay. Now, we don't go around castigating the police, because we've great respect for the uniform police. Because they're the first at a car accident. They're the first pulling people out of burning buildings. And usually on a Friday and Saturday night, they're stopping drunks, killing each other. And you have to have that bit of respect for them. But is there human rights any more valuable than mine? No. My problem is with the plainclothes, the special branch, the specially designed undercover, who seem to be above the law, who create miscarriages of justice, who take part in organising the miscarriage of justice. And somebody once said to me, how could you stop miscarriages of justice? Well, I believe if someone is found guilty at the end of a case where there's been an acquittal or a conviction has been overturned, that the police who fabricated the evidence or perjured themselves or intimidated people should be given the same sentence as the person who they helped convict wrongfully. And with that, I'll say thank you.